I mean, you must know it well enough that...
I think I could probably recite it verbatim. But the secret is, I once read in a book where it said, when you read a good book through the second time, you don't see something in it that you didn't see before. You see something in yourself that wasn't there before. You see, when I read this, I create a greater awareness. Let me just read you one line out of here, 2 lines.
Okay.
Hill said, the missing link in all systems of education known to civilization today may be found in the failure of educational institutions to teach students how to organize and use knowledge after they acquire it. He went on to say that we should understand the real meaning of the word educate. It's not going to a brick-and-mortar edifice for 25 years. Okay. That's gathering information. You'll probably develop your memory, but I would question how well you develop your mind. And I'm not against education because I encourage my children to go to school, as we know it. Now, he said the word education comes from the word educo. And he says it's derived from the Latin word educo, meaning to induce, to draw out, or to develop from within. An educated person is not necessarily one who has an abundance of general or specialized knowledge. An educated person is one who has so developed the faculties of their mind that they may acquire anything they want or its equivalent without violating the rights of others. An educated person is the one that knows how to go and get what they want out of life without being selfish.
In sense, a researcher, somebody who knows what they're looking for and knows how to go about finding
Well, I think we should forever be involved in research because learning is a lifelong process. You never stop learning. Education means to draw from within. We're drawing on an infinite source. We've got deep reservoirs of talent and ability within us. We can learn to do anything. We have phenomenal powers. If we used our body like we used our mind, we'd probably just move our little finger.
Okay. We don't exercise our mind enough.
No. But we're not taught to. Kids in school should be taught, before the school year ever starts, to sit down. They should be given a blank report card and get them to visualize the marks they want to get and write their own report card. This is before school starts, first week in school. And then the teacher should say, now I want you just to concentrate on how to get that mark, and I don't want you to think of why you can't. And I want you to form the attitude that you're going to get it. Now some people say that's not being realistic. That's being very realistic. That's following the success principles that go back 6,000 years in recorded history. That's how everything was accomplished.
That's not engaging in fantasy thinking, in wishful thinking, in daydreaming we talk about.
No. Well, that's where all greatness comes from. Greatness comes from fantasy. I would imagine that when Edison first saw the light bulb, he was fantasizing. But he kept fantasizing, and he built it into a theory, and then he built it into an image, and then he built it into a fact.
Ah.
I mean, when I was a kid, it was a fantasy to think of going to the moon. We've been up there with cars, playing golf.
Okay, you mentioned in terms of success principles, attitude, this business of attitude.
Attitude. It takes in the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you act. I'd have a difficult time really explaining attitude right just in a conversation. I use a board in the seminar, and well, I did an attitude seminar last night. We spent 3 hours dealing with that one subject, you know, so to do it here in 3 minutes, I can do it. I haven't learned how yet.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
I recognize it's difficult because we talk...
You have to have a winning attitude, though, Tom.
Okay. In human relations, we talk about the toughest thing with managing people. The toughest thing to deal with is their attitude.
That's right.
That's almost impossible.
And that's the one thing where management falls down.
But we can't change people's attitudes.
Well, nobody can change another person's attitude. The only attitude we can change is our own. But you see, if management have the idea it's their attitude and we can't do anything about it, then they're not going to do anything about it. But if management arrive at the conclusion, yes, it is attitude, and let's teach the people something about attitude. Let's teach them something about themselves. Let's make them realize that they're worth something, that they're valuable, that the greatest resource we've got. Companies spend about 65% of every dollar that comes in goes back out on employees and wages and benefits, and yet management knows less about employees than anything else. They know more about the gadgets and the widgets than they do about the people.
Okay, so your suggestion is we develop a winning attitude.
Absolutely.
Can you define that for me, first of all? What is a winning attitude?
Well, if we can understand, let me digress for a second. The whole universe operates by laws, and there's a law of opposites. It's called the law of polarity. Everything has its opposite. There's a right and a left side. There's a front and a back, an up and a down, a hot and a cold, positive and negative, yin the yang. You know, well, you can think negative or you can think positive, but you can't think both at the same time. You're only going to think one way at one time. And we have to train our mind to think or look for the positive or the good in things. There's good in everything. There's no such thing as no good.
Car broke down on the way over to the station.
There's something good about it. There's something good about it. Now, you may have to look to find out what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's something good in everything. There has to be a positive and a negative for anything to exist. There's a law of gender that decrees that. Science understands it. It's taught in science.
Okay.
Well, once we understand that there's this law of opposites, there's negative thoughts or positive thoughts. As the thought energy flows into our mind, we decide what we're going to think. A person's out of work. They can decide to think, I can't find a job, but they can decide to think, I can. If they're thinking, I'm going to find one, then they'll start attracting a train of thought to them, figuring out how to find it. You really have to understand how your conscious and your subconscious mind works in relation to your body or your physical world to understand attitude. Attitude should be taught as a subject in school ahead of reading, writing, arithmetic, or anything else. Because it's a person's attitude that's going to determine the marks they get.
Okay, maybe part of attitude or related to attitude is this business of self-image, which you talked about.
Yeah. Well, that would, like we were talking about success principles, and I was saying you got to get the winning attitude, you've got to set a goal. Then you have to work on self-image. Now, when we think, we build images in our mind. Dr. Maxwell Maltz discovered the self-image concept as we know it today. In 1960, he was a plastic surgeon. And he realized he was operating on people. He may removed a nasty scar from their face. And he noticed sometimes when he removed the scar or maybe did a nose job on them or something, there was a great psychological change took place in the person. Where they may have been introverted, they started to become very gregarious and outgoing. And he postulated that there must be two images that we have, an exterior image, and we also have an inner self.